I call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for October 24th, 2022. The first order of business is approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Councilmember Stern, or is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cummings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the agenda is adopted. The next order of business is approval of the October 10th, 2022 Transportation Committee meeting minutes. Did anyone have any changes or additions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cummings. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the minutes are adopted. And now we turn to employee recognition. We have General Manager Koistra.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Today we're pleased to honor 3 employees whose work really helps people access transit. And that includes work where we help individuals with schedules and finding their way through our system and navigating our system, and then also the work of passes that is really an important part of people having availability to transit through our pass programs. So these nominees will be introduced by Dennis Dworshak, who's the Senior Manager of Revenue Collection, and Ben Rakowski, Senior Manager of Transit Information. I believe I handed off to, and he's standing, Dennis.
Yes. Madam Council.
Aye.
Madam Chair, Council members. I'd like to, Lisa, come up and help me present. We have 2 members from Revenue Operation that we're going to present awards to today. Very well deserved. Nick Burrell and Dustin Crescenti. Okay, we'll start off with Nick Burrell. Everyone pretty much knows Nick. I don't know if you don't. If you don't, you will shortly. Nick is a stellar employee. Wears many hats over in Revenue Operation. More than 7 years ago, he started a pilot program called the Access Pass, and you guys are probably familiar with it. Through this program, partners like Hennepin, Anoka County's UCare, Health Partners, they distributed unlimited rides to customers on Medicaid. These partners are then charged based on their usage, which is different than it used to be. This program is now our highest used program, expected to gain more than $3 million in revenue this year alone, so which is phenomenal for this program that just was a pilot just recently. In addition to Nick has another hat he wears. He's the manager of the ambassadors, and these ambassadors, what they do is before and after these games, these special events, Vikings games, Twins games, concerts, they will help our customers get to and from the game. After the game, after the platform is filled with up to 8,000 customers, they can empty that platform in less than an hour. That's just quite a. They also help when we have a rail shutdown. We have rail shutdowns. Nick schedules all these ambassadors that help the customers get onto the buses that we call them bus bridges. So Nick is definitely a stellar employee, and he's definitely an asset to Revenue Operations and to Metro Transit. Lisa's going to introduce Dustin.
Yes, Dustin Crescenti. He works in our Revenue Operations Department as a sales operations specialist. Dustin has spearheaded the long-anticipated University of Minnesota Universal Transit Pass. Along with several others in the Revenue Operations and Marketing, he helped overcome numerous obstacles, including legal issues, technology constraints, while building partnerships with many different departments and business groups at the U of M. The efforts paid off, resulting in an agreement to auto-load Universal Transit Pass on each eligible U of M student ID card. To date, more than 20,000 U of M students have activated their pass on their ID cards. And ridership has gone up. Students are tagging 9,000 to 11,000 times each weekday, and ridership has doubled on weekends compared to last year. Congratulations, Dustin.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much to both of you. I mean, we work and try and bring back ridership after the pandemic. There's programs like this that get people on buses and trains and get them used to riding is really, really kind of our leading step. So thank you so much for what you do.
Stay there. Ben?
Madam Chair, council members, I'd like to introduce Pam Tim. And Pam Tim is a Transit Information Center representative. She's worked in our department since 2014. And the Transit Information Center, we are the regional provider for information for our customers. So our reps utilize a series of tools and systems and data to provide our customers accurate, customer-friendly information. And often they're really the lifeline for our customers out on the street looking to get their next bus, dealing with detours and other events that impact our system. And Pam takes this responsibility seriously every day. She has a superb track record of customer service. She goes the extra mile for our customers every day on every call. She really has a goal to provide accurate information at every step of the way and make sure the customer is getting the information, and she'll advocate for the customer. She'll come back and let us know what's going on and what we can do to improve that experience for customers. So just a few weeks ago, Pam was recognized by the Transit Information Center representatives with our annual Reps Choice Award. So the reps actually choose one of their colleagues to be recognized, and Pam won that recognition this year. It was really a testament to the work that she's done. Her teammates said a lot of the same things that apply to her customer service skills applied to her as a team member. She goes the extra distance. She's always willing to help out. She assists all of the teammates and customers the same way. So she really exemplifies both that improving the customer experience and building these great workplaces that we strive to achieve here at the Council and Metro Transit. So I really appreciate the work of Pam Kim. Congratulations, Pam, for all the great work that you've done.
Thank you.
Same thing. Without good customer service, that is how we keep our customers. I mean, that is really, really important. So thank you very much for the work you do. Get better. I always feel like we're very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. All right, now we're on to reports, and we're going to start with MTS Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Brief update tonight. We are pleased to be hosting a national conference this week in downtown Minneapolis. The Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations will host their annual conference this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's a big event for us on the MTS planning side. There's a mix of sessions, workshops, mobile tours, both walking tours as well as transit tours. And MTS staff is also contributing to the conference, as well as some of our peers in community development. There are 9 Met Council speakers between different events, so we're pleased to share our work as well as to hear what others are doing. We'll have a regional solicitation process update tonight, as well as a business item related to our expansion of our Metro Mobility fleet and replacement buses. So we'll hear those tonight as well, but I'll stop the report there.
Sounds good, thank you. Questions, comments from council members? All right, then we are on to Metro Transit General Manager Cloister.
I'll have a very short report tonight. Just quickly, thank you for those who were able to participate in the New Loop Garage tour today. It's a big space. It'll look a lot different when it's filled with buses, but I really appreciate your interest and of those who were able to attend today, and thank you for that. And also thank you to those council members who attended the Gold Line groundbreaking ceremony. It was a great event. It was attended by a lot of people and a lot of local officials, and Representative McCollum was there, and
Cloister's here. Oh my gosh, everybody's here. Pressure's on. No. I didn't see you come in right. There's no specific tab report this time because our primary action was considering the regional solicitation funding scenarios, and Mr. Peterson will be presenting that as the last information item. But with the chair's leave, I thought I would just give a quick overview of the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, its funding and programming and planning, and what it does and how it supports and serves you. The purpose of the TAC is to set the objectives for transportation funding. And the TAB sets it, but the TAC, the technical experts, say, how should the money be spent? What are the problems you're going to face, the challenges? These are all folks that, they're obviously they're mostly engineers, and they also assure that there's a regional balance and participation of all counties, agencies, cities, the like. The membership of the TAC, certainly there's from the Metropolitan Council, there's Mr. Koister and Mr. Carlson, but others such as, Department of Transportation, pedestrian, freight, DNR, MAC. Every county has their county engineer come, and then the Minneapolis city engineer and the St. Paul engineer come. And then they are run by a chair and a vice chair and a secretary, and it's Mr. Carlson's position, Director of Transportation Services, that appoints a member of his staff to be secretary. The chair, the current chair, John Solberg, is coming up end of his term this December, and the way in which the selection of the chair is done is a little bit different. Every 2 years it's done. You cannot succeed yourself, and each group, agency, county, city, meets, decides on a person to serve on a nominating committee. Those 3 people meet and come up with a selection. If it's not unanimous, then it goes to the entire TAC. And what is an informal thing the TAC does is they rotate city, county, agency, city, county, agency. And next time will be the cities that will have the TAC chair. It's a really important function. The TAB really depends on them. And then they also have the funding and programming committee of the TAC, and that's managing the federal transportation funds that come to the regions. They handle the regional solicitation, the drafting of the applications, the scoring, the appeals, and then the membership of that committee is, again, the counties, MnDot Metro, state aid, DNR, suburban transit, Metro Transit, again. And then the planning committee is another committee. There's two standing committees, funding and programming and planning. And planning deals with the transportation and policy issues regarding that. And they are, one of the things they're supposed to do is monitor changes in federal regulations and laws and how they apply to MPOs, and then inform the TAB and of course you. And then they also do the development, as you know, of the TPP, the UPWP, and then MnDOT's State Multimodal Transportation Plan. And they also are responsible for maintaining watching the performance of the programs to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be done. And again, the same type of folks are members. And there is also, they've come up now with 2 technical working groups. One is for bicycle pedestrian and one is for transit. And if I may, since we're talking about TAC, I thought I would just do a really quick overview of how TAC and TAB for the council determine what projects are going forward in the regional solicitation. The funding and programming develops the solicitation process. They develop the programs that, through application, they send out the applications, they get them back, they look at them, and then they decide, they send them to TAB, and TAB either approves them or disapproves them, and then it goes to the Transportation Committee, your committee, and then to the Met Council. There's a little, one of the reasons TAB is done this way is because, as you may know, our MPO is one of the only ones without locally elected officials, because the TAB was formed prior to that regulation. And so to concur and satisfy the federal requirements in that regard is why the TAB has been not only designated, but created and designated as the funding agency, if you will, for federal funds. It's the as you know, the Surface Transportation Block Group and the CMAQ funds. And the one thing you may not know is, which I didn't know, is that the Met Council, on terms of the programs and the tip, cannot modify. They can only approve or disapprove, and then it goes back to TAB, who determines how to resubmit it to you and the council for approval. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? All right, thank you, Peter. Now we're on to our non-consent business. The first item is business item 2022-265, a same week item, which is renewal of interagency agreement between Metro Transit and MnDot for a 5-year contract for salt procurement. And we have Mike Maddio here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. Today we are seeking the approval from Metro Transit to renew a contract with MnDot for the procurement of bulk salt. This is the request to renew an existing contract that expired in May of last year that allows us to utilize the state's purchasing power to buy bulk salt to be utilized in our system during the winter months. By renewing this contract, it allows us to tap into Metro or MnDOT's purchasing power of being the largest procurement agency of salt in the state, and allows us to utilize state contracting pricing to get that material. It also allows us, we're partnering with MnDOT for this contract, allows us to have them have the main responsibility of managing the handling of this material and most importantly, the storage of the material, which negates the need for us to have to acquire and maintain a salt storage facility of our own. So we're able to utilize several MnDOT salt storage facilities located throughout the Twin Cities, which makes it a much more efficient process for our staff to be able to acquire the material when needed. And we see that having salt in our system is a pending need for us with the winter months quickly approaching, and the need to have that material on hand for us to be able to utilize it for the safety of not only our customers, but for our staff members as well. So we're seeking the approval to agree upon the contractor price set by MnDOT for the next 5 years for a total cost of roughly $611,000 to get that material. So I'm available for any questions from any council members if they wish.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions. First of all, just out of curiosity, how much has the price of salt changed since the last time the contract was signed?
The last salt contract that we had, I don't have it with me in front of me right now, but our last salt contract was approximately about 30% less than what it is currently. And we attribute that to a couple of factors, primarily the cost of fuel and transportation of those materials, and just the overall cost of raw materials going up in general.
Okay, if I may. Also, have we looked at alternatives to salt? I mean, salt.
To salt itself?
Yes.
So there's a long story behind all of that, and I don't want to go into full the details for you because I might bore people. But we have worked with several agencies throughout the Twin Cities, including MnDOT, in the regards to the use of salt. And what we see primarily as the biggest factor for all of us right now is the proper application of salt. So we haven't been able to find a material, and both MnDOT and the University of Minnesota have done extensive research to try to find alternatives because of salt impacts to our ecosystem. And unfortunately, we have not been able to identify a substitute that will work as efficiently as salt does. So what we and other agencies have worked together on is focusing on the proper training of staff and the calibration of our equipment as we apply that material. So I'm happy to report to you that as of last month, we had 87 staff members from public facilities trained through the Minnesota Smart SALT program, which is SMART program, which is an effort by the University of Minnesota to provide training of application rates to the ground level people that do the work. And those people attended a full day class and then had to take a test, which they passed, which shows that they inherited the knowledge needed to properly apply salt at rates that would be considered normal or acceptable by industry standards. So we're really trying to limit the use of the amount of salt. And besides that issue, we have partnered with other agencies that have done tremendous research in the use of what we call salt brine, which you might see on streets now where there's actually, for lack of a better term, a salt water solution that's applied prior to freezing conditions. And that lessens the amount of salt that we have to apply if it's applied at the right time and the conditions allow it. So there's active efforts by ourselves and several other agencies to do all we can to limit how much salt we use on a yearly consumption basis because of its impacts. So we do work regularly with a lot of sister agencies to talk about those exact topics, including the City of St. Paul, MnDot, Ramsey, and Hennepin County.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very informative, helpful. Other questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Stern.
Thanks. So are you also using like sand and some rock in that as well? And then is there any kind of sweeping type system where you get some of the materials back to reuse in the future?
So, Madam Chair and council members, we don't actually use sand in our process, primarily because of its impacts on the bus system primarily and some of the negative impacts that come from sand. Although we do use sand in the rail applications, they use sand themselves for a kind of a different purpose, but we don't mix any of our salt with any sand material itself. We use basically straight salt or enhanced salt if we have to, if that makes sense. And we do, I will say that in areas that we do occasionally have, whether it's over application or maybe a piece of equipment that maybe malfunctions, we do try to go out right away and collect that material back up out of the system so it doesn't remain and get washed into the storm sewers without having a beneficial impact. And that's part of a training aspect that we're providing to our staff members too, is the idea that if for some chance they do over sand or over salt a location, that we quickly try to recapture that material and get it back out of the system so it doesn't just go into the waste stream with negative impacts, if that makes sense.
Yep, it definitely does. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments? All right, so the motion before us is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute an agreement 21I-039 with Minnesota Department of Transportation for the purpose of supplying Metro Transit with bulk salt for system use for an amount not to exceed $611,000. With that, I'd entertain a motion to
So
approve.
moved.
Moved by Councilmember Zarin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you very much, Mike.
We're all feeling salty.
Thank you so
What
much.
happens? Thank you. Next, we are on to business item 2022-272, which is small bus procurement contract. And we have Paul Colton here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. Yes, we've got more buses to purchase to keep our Metro Mobility and Transit Link system going. And so I have the following recommendation and background for you. We'll be entering into 2 contracts is the recommendation, one with North Central Bus and one with Hoagland Bus to buy a total of 101 vehicles. In the list in your memo item, you can see the various agencies and programs that will be receiving those buses. The majority are replacement buses, but I will note that there are 12 expansion buses for Metro Mobility in anticipated and continued growth of that program and our ability and need to meet that civil right for the Twin Cities and our customers. These buses are being purchased through the state of Minnesota small bus contract. This is an annual contract that they do, and it makes it very convenient for the Met Council to purchase off of and provides us with multiple vendors to purchase from, as well as competitive pricing. So the funding for these projects comes from our 5307 federal funds, as well as our RTC funds. So this particular purchase has a lot of RTC funding in it for us to take that we worked into our budget. And then our federal funds will clean up our 2022 bus purchases for the year. And then looking to the future, we'll be back in January with our 2023 start of our small bus purchase as we await our federal grant that we hope to have in December. So future, current. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to take any questions that you have.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Sterner.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, could you tell me what the fuel type is on these buses here? Are they a variety of them, or is it all diesel?
Sure, Madam Chair, Council Member, These are gasoline-operated on Ford chassis, and that's right now the only thing that Ford offers on that particular chassis, the E450 chassis, which is kind of the backbone of our Metromobility and TransitLink system.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? All right, the action today is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute contract 22P 373 with North Central Bus Sales for up to 63 replacement buses and 12 expansion buses in an amount not to exceed $9,365,194, and contract 22P 362 with Hugland Bus for up to 26 replacement buses in an amount not to exceed $3,522,206 for a total procurement value not to exceed $12,887,400. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the business item.
Move approval.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
The next three business items, we have Frank Alarcon. We'll see if I said that right. And so there are three business items related to the Metro Blue Line. So it's business item 2022-273, 274, and 276. And Katie Roth, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. Before the next three items are presented, I wanted to take just a minute to introduce Frank Alarcon to the committee, as this is his first time before you. Frank joined the Arterial BRT Department in June of this year as a project manager, so just coming up on 4 months. Time for three business items, no problem. He joins Metro Transit from Ramsey County, where he worked on East Metro Transit projects for 5 years, including most recently as the Deputy Project Manager on the Metro Purple Line. So a lot of great experience joining our team. He is a native of the San Francisco Bay Area, but perhaps, I think more importantly, he's a regular transit rider who lives car-free in South Minneapolis, just a block away from a Metro A-Line station. So we're really happy to have Frank on the team, and I'll hand things over to him for these items.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Katie, for that introduction. Thank you, Chair Barber, committee members. The next two business items are very similar in content. So business item 2022-273 requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a no-cost joint powers agreement with the City of St. Paul for right-of-way management authority needed for construction of the Metro B-Line project. So the council will be leading B-Line construction during the 2023 and 2024 construction seasons. Most of the work within right-of-way controlled by the City of St. Paul will be along Selby Avenue, between Snelling Avenue and Lexington Parkway, and also between Dale Street and John Ireland Boulevard. Through this agreement, the City of St. Paul will grant permits and access to easements and right-of-way owned or maintained by the city for B-Line construction at no cost to the council. The city will also exercise its right-of-way management powers necessary for the construction of the B-Line, including but not limited to those powers pertaining to the relocation of utilities within city right-of-way. In closing, business item 2022-273 requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute joint powers agreement 22I-030 with the City of St. Paul for right-of-way management authority needed for construction of the Metro B-Line project. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council members? Seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-273.
So move. I'll second that. I'll do a second.
Moved by Councilmember Chandler, seconded by Councilmember Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. On to the next one.
Thank you, Chair Barber. Committee members, business item 2022-274 is exactly the same as the previous business item, except this agreement is with Ramsey County rather than the City of St. Paul. So Ramsey County controls rights-of-way along the Metro B-Line route include Marshall Avenue as well as the portion of Selby Avenue between Lexington Parkway and Dale Street. So this business item requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Joint Powers Agreement 22I-031 with Ramsey County for right-of-way management authority needed for construction of the Metro B-Line project. And similar to the previous business item, this is also a no-cost agreement. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Council members? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-274.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Back to you, Frank.
Thank you, Chair Barber, committee members. Business item 2022.276 is for procurement of pylons for the Metro B-Line stations through the council's existing 5-year pylon contract. This proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to exercise an option on existing contract 19P 385A with ASC Acquisition Company doing business as Albrecht Sign Company for the fabrication and delivery of 47 pylon signs and 1 suspended horizontal sign for installation on the Metro B-Line project in an amount not to exceed $1,477,770. Staff are requesting a same-week council action to ensure timely fabrication and delivery of the pylons. So pylons in our system are a signature feature of bus rapid transit stations. They display real-time transit information, provide video surveillance, and contribute to the recognizable branding of BRT stations across our region. This purchase would make use of the council's existing pylon contract to obtain the pylons needed for all the stations along the Metro B-Line in St. Paul and Minneapolis. This contract was competitively procured and executed in 2021. Very similar to how the council procures buses, we structured this contract with an initial base order plus options to purchase more pylons within the 5-year contract period. This purchase, because it's using that existing contract, will be able to take advantage of previously negotiated unit pricing, the same unit pricing that was used on the Metro D-Line. The Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity thoroughly reviewed the original procurement for this contract for disadvantaged business enterprise opportunity, and based on their research and analysis, no DBE goal was set. However, pylon installation will occur through the B-Line's construction contracts, which have not yet been assigned a DBE commitment, but past precedent would suggest that there will be one for those contracts. In closing, business item 2022-276 requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to exercise an option on existing contract 19P 385A with ASC Acquisition Company doing business as Albrecht Sign Company for the fabrication and delivery of 47 pylon signs and 1 suspended horizontal sign for installation on the Metro B-Line project in an amount not to exceed $1,477,770.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Zarin.
Yes, Chair. Just wondering if these signs are manufactured locally?
They are, yes. Albrecht Sign Company is based in the metro area.
Additional questions or comments?
Oh, another comment.
Go ahead, Councilmember Zarin.
It's just hard for me to believe that there wasn't a DBE available to partner with us. It's I know a number of DBE sign companies, so I just it's hard for me to. I'm gonna vote in favor of this, of course, but it just I think we could push a little harder on that.
Chair Barber, Councilmember Zarin, I hear your point, and I would just offer that in approximately 4 years, we will be re-procuring for this item, and I would expect that OEO would complete a very thorough review at that point in time as well.
Just a follow-up comment. I think we've made some progress in this realm and getting people in DBEs in place to be able to take those sort of contracts. Thank you.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Being a person that rides public transit, I know how important these signs are. And I do recall us waiting a significant amount of time to get a vendor replacement from our prior vendor. So I'm glad that we have a person or a company that is able to take this on. And I also see many opportunities for smaller companies to take their skills, transfer them to a new technology, and then scale up for these types of projects. So I know that is a process that has to start with planning, and then we will get there, because if we don't start with the planning now and provide the support to allow companies to grow and expand, it will not happen. So, I appreciate the comment, Ray, on that, and it is a challenge that we just have to just keep pushing for.
And I see that Jody's in the audience, so she is hearing this as well, so I think that's always helpful. All right, additional, Councilmember Sterner.
Yeah, I just was gonna make a point that, it is a local company in Fridley, and it is, at least they pay prevailing wages, it's a union shop. So I do feel positive about that you have a union shop, sign company and small business as well.
All right, additional questions or comments from council members? All right, I just have a final comment, just because overall on the three, on the Beeline items, I'm very excited for this project. It's really nice to see the business items started coming in front of us for some of these steps. We know these are the steps leading up to bigger things, but this is such a unique project because it connects so many of our different transit lines together, and to me, it's the one that's kind of the final actually connecting everything together. So welcome, Frank. We're really happy to have you here. You have a big cheerleader in me in this project. So
Thank you.
With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-276, same week.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cummings. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Councilmember Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we are on to business item 2022-275, which is the Metro C Line Olson Memorial Highway long-term alignment. And we have Kyle O'Donnell Burrows and Laura Gredeman here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, council members. I am here. I'm excited to introduce Laura Gredeman, who's going to be presenting this item today. Laura Gredeman is a new planner with our team. She joined the Arturo BR team this summer in June as well. We have a lot of new faces here this evening. And she is the planning lead on the team responsible for the upcoming G line and the E line, as well as responsible the planning lead for this item here on the C line long-term alignment. Laura joins us from the Humphrey School with her master's in urban and regional planning, as well as from a career doing analysis in another field. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura.
Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, Chair, council members. Good afternoon. I'm here today with business item 2022-275 for the Metro C Line Olson Memorial Highway long-term alignment. So our proposed action for 2022-275 is that the Metropolitan Council approve the staff recommendation to retain the long-term Metro C Line alignment on Olson Memorial Highway. So the planning history that brought us to this recommendation began in April of 2016 when the council approved the C Line station plan with temporary stations on Olson Memorial Highway. And this was in anticipation of disruption from construction from the Blue Line Extension Light Rail Transit project. However, that summer in 2016, the staff conducted a study for long-term alignment options for the C Line, both on Olson Memorial Highway and on Glenwood Avenue. And this was a result of engagement that we had done in the corridor, and we had heard from community members that they were interested in spreading out the high-quality transit throughout the neighborhood instead of keeping it all on Olson Memorial Highway. As a result of that study, in November of 2016, the council approved a plan to move the C Line to Glenwood Avenue with the opening of the Blue Line extension. And in June of 2019, the C Line did open on Olson Memorial Highway, but with 3 temporary stations along the corridor. And then most recently, in June of 2022, the council adopted a revised route for the Blue Line extension so that the Blue Line will no longer be serving Olson Memorial Highway. So given this history, our long-term recommendation is for the C line to remain on Olson Memorial Highway, and that is a result of the Blue Line extension no longer duplicating transit service on Olson Memorial Highway. As a result of this recommendation, our riders will not have to change their travel patterns in the area, nor will they have to board at a different location than what they're used to today. This also provides us with an opportunity to coordinate with MnDOT for their upcoming roadway project on Olson Memorial Highway. So as a part of that roadway construction project on Olson Memorial Highway, the temporary stations on Olson Memorial Highway would be made permanent. While the intersections that the stations are at today would remain the same, the platforms may be shifted far side of the intersection based on the results of our planning and engagement when that time comes. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's outside of the scope of today's action. Any future changes to the stations would come forward before the council in a separate amendment to the C-Line station plan. So this slide has just an image of the temporary station on Olson Memorial Highway currently, and as a reminder, there's 3 of these on Olson today. This one is at Olson and Bryant, and then on the right is a permanent station at Penn and 43rd Avenue. And this is kind of just a good opportunity to see the difference between the temporary station and our permanent BRT standard platform locations. So on the picture on the right, you can see we have the Pylon with the real-time rider information. The shelter has light, heat, an emergency cell telephone, and also there's more space for riders to sit or stand as they're waiting for the bus. So as part of the MnDOT 2027 roadway project, all of the temporary stations along Olson will match the rest of our standard BRT platform design. And then here's just an overview of the existing and planned transit service within the area. The C line is shown on Olson Memorial Highway in the thick gray line. Route 9 would continue to serve Glenwood Avenue as it is today. And this is all within the Metro Transit microtransit pilot area, which is shown shaded in red. And then finally, this neighborhood will also be served by Green Line extension stations when that opens up. So finally, our next steps are to coordinate with MnDOT on their roadway project and also conduct planning and engagement processes to determine the correct area in the intersection where the platform locations should ultimately be. And just to reiterate this again, if there are changes needed to the platform locations, that will come before this group again in a separate action in the future. So then finally, just to reiterate our proposed action 2022-275, that the Metropolitan Council approve the staff recommendation to retain the long-term Metro C-Line alignment on Olson Memorial Highway. And I will take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a couple questions. The first one was the plan to put the temporary stations on Olson during construction of the past light rail line. Is that typical for our LRT projects for a BRT service to be provided to support service during construction? And secondly, what happens besides just maintaining Route 9 on Glenwood when that shift was made from having service on Glenwood? Did we do any analysis to kind of beef up the service based on what people were expecting with the BRT on Glenwood? Because sometimes when we do that shift, they're making plans, for development around that area, or they're expecting service based on the original plan, and then when it shifts, they're kind of left behind. So my question is, was there consideration for community benefits or services along Glenwood Avenue?
Yeah, Council Chair, Council Member, I will maybe have Kyle answer your first question, but as far as the question about the impact on Glenwood Avenue, we did reach out to stakeholder groups along the corridor who had originally been involved in that decision, and that included the Harrison Park, the Harrison neighborhood, the North Side Residents Redevelopment Council, and Heritage Park as well. And we did have a meeting with a former board member at Heritage Park Neighborhood Association and spoke with her about what the change would mean for the neighborhood, and she was enthusiastic about staying on Olson. So I guess to your point, we did reach out to stakeholders along the corridor that were expecting the sea line to be moving to Glenwood Avenue, and we did not receive any pushback. But I'll let Kyle speak to that as well.
Chair, council members, sure, I'll expand on that a little bit. Certainly Laura spoke to a little bit of the engagement we've done there. I think the retaining of the Route 9 on Glenwood is going to be, kind of the primary transit service on Glenwood. Historically, that has been a relatively high-frequency local route. Obviously, we're well aware of the operator shortages and some of the challenges that we're facing there. Additionally, this whole area, including along Glenwood, is included in the Metro Transit micro-mobility pilot project going point to point there as well. We've of course communicated with the city, our city stakeholders and county stakeholders as well, and have reviewed some of the development proposals that are proposed to be along Glenwood for any effects that this might have had, and included that into our considerations for this recommendation here as well. To your first question, and let me repose it to you, and just if you could confirm it for me. The idea, if we've done temporary station locations in other locations where LRT is expected, is that the, so the rationale for the temporary station locations were really to avoid making a permanent infrastructure investment that could be disrupted or have to be reconstructed with the implementation of the blue line along Olson Memorial Highway in the future. The C line itself operating on Olson Memorial Highway was not it was not intended to be like an interim solution until the blue line was opening, or something that was having temporary service that was supposed to mirror light rail service through this area. It was its own service in this corridor. The reason those stations were made temporary at that point was just to avoid having to reconstruct something that would be made that would be impacted during blue line construction at that time. Now that blue line construction won't be happening through this area, we can make these permanent here without worry about that disruption or duplication of service there. Did I understand your question?
You did, exactly. And then Chair, just one more thing. And part of the reason why I'm asking that is because I'm thinking about the current proposed route for the Blue Line extension, and following the environmental assessment stage, what might happen during that stage during construction. And I would imagine there would be a similar assessment done, and looking at the service changes that need to be made or might be temporary, would there be the potential for something similar to happen with the Blue Line extension going from downtown Minneapolis to Brooklyn Park?
Madam Chair, council members, so you mean in terms of implementing temporary stations along that alignment for like a new service until that's open, until the Blue Line extension opens up. Yeah, I'm not familiar if that'd be something that Metro Transit would do.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, I'm not aware of either of any plans. This is a unique situation because we originally had planned for this sea line to go on Olson Memorial Highway. Was changed when the Blue Line when the Blue Line extension planning was proceeded, and then it changed back when those. So this is really an unusual one-off situation, and I'm not aware that we would provide that we have plans to provide any temporary change in service along the Blue Line extension corridor at this point.
Yeah, it's just, everything's not connecting for me, and I've had this question in my brain for quite some time about the BRT service down Olson and how the timing on that and how it happened in the decision-making process. So I think I need to dig into that a little bit more.
Okay, great. We'll help you. Excuse me, Madam Chair and Council Member. We'll do our best to help sort of pinpoint how this evolved, because it is complicated and it is unusual. So we'll take whatever time you need to help you understand how this happened.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, and then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-275.
I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Deeren, second.
Seconded by Councilmember Zarin. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, and welcome, Laura.
Thanks.
All right, so that ends our business for the evening. I would propose that all items, with the exceptions of the same week item, can move consent to the full council. Everyone agrees? Okay.
Go ahead. I mean, I have no objection.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you did. I was ready. Okay, so then next we're moving on to our information items. We have 3 information items tonight. The first one is Metro F-Line Corridor Plan, and we have Jake Knight and Kyle is back with us, so welcome again. And
Chair, council members, good afternoon again. I am also excited to introduce Jake Knight to you all, who is be his first presentation in front of the Transportation Committee. Another new planner on our team also joined in June. The final of our 3 new faces here for you this evening. Jake is the planning lead on the team responsible for project development on the F line, as well as the future H line. Jake brings a lot of experience in transit and transportation planning in our region, coming to us from the consulting side, and as well as a past intern at Metro Transit. So we're excited to welcome Jake back to Metro Transit. And with that, I will turn it over to Jake to present this item.
welcome, Jake.
Thank you, Kyle. Chair, council members, my name is Jake Knight, Senior Planner in the Arterial BRT Group here at Metro Transit. As Kyle said, I am leading the planning effort for the F-Line. And I'm here today with an information item to talk about our draft corridor plan, which is our process for establishing station locations along the F-Line. The Metro F-Line will be a bus rapid transit lines providing fast, frequent, all-day service to a 13-mile corridor from Northtown Transit Center in Blaine to downtown Minneapolis, primarily via Central and University Avenues. The F-Line represents a substantial upgrade to the existing Route 10, which is the 5th highest ridership route in our region, not only today, but also before the pandemic. Route 10, like existing BRT, has retained more ridership than typical routes. The F-Line, as we've shared with you before, the F-Line was approved for entry into the project development phase of FTA's Capital Investment Grants Program under Small Starts, and we're anticipating a project opening day of 2026. The F-Line was identified in March of 2021 when the council took an action to set the alignment for the F-Line. It's really the result of analysis and engagement coming out of Network Next. And we take that information gained and continue to use it through the project. Since March of 2021, we've been coordinating with our agency partners. Since January of 2022, we've been meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee, made up of MnDot, our county partners, city partners, as well as other agencies to develop these proposed station locations that are included in our draft corridor plan. The corridor plan, again, released to the public today, is the first of 3 versions of this corridor plan, which again establishes the station locations on the F-line. We have a 6-week public comment period. We will incorporate that feedback into an action item that we'll be bringing to you in spring of 2023 in our recommended corridor plan. Today is just an information item. After the recommended corridor plan, we'll have another public engagement period, incorporate that feedback into a final corridor plan, which we anticipate in summer of 2023. We will then proceed into engineering in the middle of 2023 and continue that into late 2024, with construction occurring over 25 and 2026. This process is similar to that from previous arterial BRT lines currently in development. Our draft corridor is a really important and an early opportunity for community input to shape the F-line. The primary purpose of our draft corridor plan is to identify station locations and again receive feedback on those proposals so we can establish them and move on throughout our project. The draft corridor plan, which again is available to the public today, addresses a few key station location questions, primarily which intersections will have BRT stations. Within those intersections, which corners of the intersection might the platforms be located, and importantly, how that location was determined, making sure that we're being transparent about the considerations that we put into these proposed locations and highlighting the work of our Technical Advisory Committee, which again has been meeting over the last year. The draft corridor plan proposes station locations that are developed through site-specific review, but these concepts will evolve and be refined through the engineering process and through continued coordination with our agency partners. The corridor plan addresses a few other issues which are ongoing. Of course, project coordination with our agency partners. The corridor plan addresses bus priority treatments, opportunities for those treatments so we can identify needs, but then also opportunities so we can feed those into our agency partners' projects. The corridor plan addresses potential supporting local service. The local service in the plan is slightly leaner than in past projects. Our current assumption is there will be local service north of Columbia Heights Transit Center, or 41st Avenue, providing coverage similar to what riders have today. South of Columbia Heights Transit Center, or 41st Avenue, we are currently not proposing local service. And in light of that, we have tighter station spacing south of that point to accommodate. Project coordination with our partners is essential to the success of the F-line. A big one has been MnDOT's Highway 47 and Highway 65 Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, or PEL study. This study looks at a broad set of alternatives for multimodal changes throughout the University Avenue and Central Avenue corridors. As you can see on the image to the right, the PEL study area overlaps quite a bit with the F-line. And because of that, we have been coordinating with MnDOT on this project since the identification of the F-line in spring of 2021. It's important to note that this Pell study is really a visioning study to identify feasible alternatives for these corridors, and that the outcome of MnDOT's Pell study will not be a programmed project. Given that, it's really important that we are collaborating closely with MnDOT to ensure that the future outcomes of this Pell study are supportive of the F-line, and also that F-line station locations do not preclude options that MnDOT would like to see in the future. Of course, all of this is informed by public engagement, which we have had the opportunity to coordinate with MnDOT over the last several months. In addition to this, we also have several other projects we're coordinating with from MnDOT, Hennepin and Anoka counties, in the cities of Minneapolis, Columbia Heights, and Fridley. So we've learned a lot about this corridor and the needs in this corridor from the Network Next process. And recently we've been taking that and raising awareness about the F-line project through coordination with MnDOT and attending events, presenting to community groups ourselves. Today kicks off a 6-week public comment period, which will end on December 5th. And right now, folks can go onto our project website and see the draft corridor plan in full, as well as station concepts for individual stations throughout the corridor. There's opportunity to provide feedback by a survey on the website right now. We're also, we'll be hosting a virtual open house on November 15th at 6:30 p.m. This is a new tactic for the planning phase of arterial BRT projects, and something we're adding to the mix based on what we've learned throughout the pandemic and from our agency partners. In addition to our virtual open house and our website, we have many other strategies to make sure that we're reaching people where they are at. It is really important in this process that we're talking to as many Route 10 riders, residents through in the corridor, businesses, property owners, and all other users as much as we can. A few things that we are highlighting in this 6-week public comment period: we're doing more extensive door knocking, making sure, again, we're talking to everyone who might be located near a proposed station. We are out at bus stops. We have signs posted. We're talking to riders. We'll be riding buses, again, making sure everyone knows that they can shape this project. We're also distributing our messages through our technical advisory committee partners through their existing channels. So today, again, this is an information item. The draft corridor plan for the F-line is available online on the project website right now. We're seeking feedback on proposed station locations through December 5th. This is the first of 3 versions of the corridor plan. We'll come back to the council for the release of the public comment period for the recommended corridor plan in the spring of '23. Incorporate feedback again into our final corridor plan in summer 2023. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss?
You know, the best part of this presentation is looking at the next steps in the project schedule. This is becoming more and more real. I have 4 cities that are along, that I represent at the Met Council along this line. And 2026 will be here very soon. We're almost at 2023. So a lot of projects going on with dates close together. So this is going to be an exciting time.
Very much so. Additional questions, comments from council members? I have a little technical one. I was just curious. So this project was approved for entry into the project development phase for small starts. It's different from some of our other ABRT lines. So what makes this one fall into that category?
Chair, I think I'll pass that to Kyle.
I see Katie coming up from
Chair, I was
behind.
about to say, I think I'll just
Leave it to me to ask the nice, easy question. Sorry.
Hello again, Chair, council members. the question you just asked is the question that Tab asked of me and Kyle when we were recently presenting on this project as well. What makes the F-line different, and why are we pursuing small starts for that project and not others? I think there are kind of a couple of confluence factors here that make this really a good candidate for that program in a way that we haven't been able to line up for the past ABRT projects. And the really big one is that in 2021, the investment from the state legislature allowed for us to identify that early local contribution to a project that to date hadn't existed in one of these projects. That, coupled with the $25 million set aside from the regional solicitation, really meant that we could make the funding package work with the Small Starts program. And we've submitted our information, and we look forward to hopefully being rated later this year and included in the president's budget and moving on toward this schedule.
Very good. Thank you. Great explanation. Appreciate it. All right. Anything from anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much and welcome to the project team. Thank you. All right. Next, we are on to our next information item, which is the climate action work plan strategies discussion. We've got a few people here tonight. One, you'll see our colleague, Councilmember Lindstrom is here. He chairs the Environment Committee, but he also chairs the Climate Action Work Group. We also have joining us Tony Fisher, Jeff Freeman, and Paul Colton to discuss. But if you want to kick off, a couple words, Peter?
I sure will. Thank you, Chair. Good to see everybody. I am really here in listen mode this afternoon, just to listen in on the conversation. And that's really because thinking about our three big buckets for emissions council-wide, those three buckets are: one, electricity related to our facilities. That's our biggest. Number two is fossil fuels related to our vehicle fleet, Metro Transit, Metro Mobility, and our own fleet of vehicles. And then number three is fossil fuels related to heating our facilities. And of course, this committee, Metro Transit, MTS, has a role to play in all three, and really looking at our emissions. I think the biggest challenge is in the transportation area, transit area. And how can it not be? If you have if you're hauling around 70 million different rides and something like 50 million miles traveled between Metro Mobility and Metro Transit, that's a whole lot of emissions related to that. We've seen our emissions go down since we first started tracking in 2005 on everything except transit and transportation, and that is because of increased service. So if you look at our matrix that we've come up with, we have little X's related to each one of the 60 plus action items, and MT and MTS have a whole bunch of X's next to them. So there's a lot of work cut out for the Transportation Committee and the Transit and Transportation folks in the years ahead, but it's important work, and I look forward to listening to the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Turn it over.
Hi, Madam Chair, Barber, and council members. I want to thank Councilmember Lindstrom for his leadership and guidance on this, along with Council Members Vento, Barber, Lee, and former Councilmember Albert Ingebrigtsen, who became part of the Climate Action Work Group, met with us over the year. I think it seems like it's been longer than a year, but maybe I just am a little bit numb to this all. But today we're going to look back at a few of the slides that we presented 2 weeks ago to the council. This is the first committee meeting that we are bringing this climate action work plan forward in, and as Councilmember Lindstrom alluded to, we are taking a deeper look at some of the transportation related actions and strategies that we will look to put forward in the next 3 to 5 years to reduce our environmental impact through greenhouse gas reduction, as well as looking at improving our resiliency through adaptation, because really that is what we're really looking to do, is become a go-to service for everybody, no matter what the circumstances are. We talk about this, we've seen this slide before, it's the purpose of the plan. Why are we doing this? Building upon our existing work. We started some of this work back in 2003, 2002. I've got numbers from rebate stuff that goes back when we went from big fat fluorescent bulbs to skinnier fluorescent bulbs. Now we're going to LED bulbs and fixtures. But we've been working at this a long time, maybe under a different push, guidance. A lot of back then was economical. Now we're looking at it both economically and well as our emissions. And I think the single biggest takeaway here is that we're building on our existing climate, but we're also looking to align and coalesce our work across the council. Previously, we worked a lot in silos. Somebody would be doing something and hardly anybody knew about it. It was just really hard to know what somebody else was doing and how you could either build upon the work they were doing, join in, or let them lead, or be the leader yourself. Project timeline, here we are, Q4. Clock is ticking louder and louder every day. Moving to the end of the year, going to get this plan in front of the council in December for adoption. Nothing really new here. We know that 2023, it's going to be time to start to implement these things. And we're, as we solicit comments here, this big final push to bring it all together. You stole my thunder.
Oh, sorry. Dang.
You just flat out stole my thunder. We've looked at this before, but again, our scope 2 emissions are purchased electricity. That wastewater treatment number is big. They're always looking to optimize their operations, but as a growing region, that's a number that is going to take some challenges to bring down. To see it shrink, we can become more efficient. I mean, more tons processed per kilowatt, whatever it is going to be, but it's there. We have the same story with light rail propulsion. Green line and blue line, they're coming. We will use more electricity than we've ever used in the past for light rail propulsion. And then our facilities, it's the one area where we can make reductions in the real time and actually see, and there's good measurement metrics to tell our story. EUI, energy use intensity, which is basically kBTU per square foot, measures how much energy used per square foot of a building. We have made progress on that. We'll continue to make progress on that. And it's one of the areas where we have a good chance to partner with Excel and others to continue the efforts. Mobile combustion, all total, what we see here, this represents less than 1% of Minnesota's GHG emissions. But what we have working in our favor is we've got leverage. We really do have the opportunity with fuel switching and opportunities as we expand our systems to be cleaner and greener. The more people we get to use our service, the bigger the impact we have on vehicle miles traveled and the related GHGs associated with that. Here we start talking about the basics of the climate plan. Dovetails with the Minnesota Climate Action Framework, that is what we call the guiding principle. It's a small umbrella. Our umbrella here is a little bit bigger. We also are looking forward in the next year that Metro Transit will be working on a divisional sustainability plan, and we know all the departments and divisions are working on work plans that bring forward the climate work to the forefront, and we will continue to work on this. Be hard pressed to talk too deeply about this without reviewing our commitments and strategies. Again, commitment number 1, environmental justice. This work provides a lot of opportunity for us to look at things that have gone on in the past, to make sure we don't repeat mistakes that have previously happened, and see what we can do to mitigate and correct what I want to say, inequity. We'll accelerate our emissions reductions from our operations. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about here as we get into the detail. What steps can we do that will reduce our emissions to ultimately achieve carbon neutrality within our operations? Work together with others, cities, counties, state, How do we accelerate our regional missions through partnerships? MnDOT's a partner. Excel Energy, the counties, the cities that have climate action plans already. How do we bring those folks together to advance the cause and create a bigger impact from the work we're doing? Oops, did I skip one? I think I did. No, we did. Commitment 4, we started talking about reducing the risks and building resiliency at the councils. I mean, keeping our services going and that citizens depend on, keeping those dependable. It's really that, through challenging climate circumstances or the pandemic or any other circumstance that will ultimately affect our ability to be there for the customers who are counting on us is really what we're looking at when we start talking about improving our resiliency. How do we do it? Redundant electrical feeds to our facilities, looking at our structures and our infrastructure we own, make sure that it is able to withstand some of the expected climate change impacts as we move forward. And last but not least, reduce the risk and build resiliency in the regions through collaboration. Again, we've got good partners out there that want to work with us. I think it's one of the takeaways we had from our external engagement work was the willingness of our partners to step forward and say, we're here for you. We want to be a part of it. We want to join in with you guys to get more of this work done. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Tony, who's going to talk about some of the MTS planning actions as it relates to the plan and the matrix that I saw Councilmember Lindstrom studying.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm a transportation planner in the MTS planning. And throughout this process, we've been trying to be clear that this is a climate action plan for us as an agency, not for the region. And so hopefully that comes through in some of these actions that represent MTS planning's intent over the next 3 to 5 years. So I've bucketed these into priority 1 and 2 actions, starting in this priority 1 group. We have in the draft UPWP, our draft budget for next year, a project to really look at electric vehicle charging needs in the region, and specifically to look at what those gaps are that result from all the activities that's going on from the private sector, federal investment, Excel Energy. Just look around geographically and otherwise. Are there people that are being left behind? Are there places that are being left behind? What's the scale of the investment that's needed to fill in that gap? So we have that budgeted for to start next year. We want to implement better greenhouse gas estimates in the long-range transportation policy plan for the region, the way we estimate the impacts of that. We want to do that in regional solicitation projects to provide better information for policymakers about the impacts of those projects that can be selected for investment in the region. We have a project starting up right now that's going to really look at those methodologies, and we look forward to implementing improved methodologies in the future. And then there's been discussion about the federal carbon reduction program. Some of that initial funding is being discussed already, but there's work to do to really think about the later year funding and take a little bit more time and energy to look at the framework for that kind of investment. So that's future work that we're planning. And then priority 2, not necessarily less important, but just a little bit further down the road or less figured out yet. MnDOT, through their statewide multimodal transportation policy plan, adopted a VMT, vehicle miles reduction traveled target. And with that, there's a desire for us as a region to see how we can support that target, to see how we can support strategies that get us to that target. So we have work to do in that area to see how we as a region can contribute to that vehicle miles traveled reduction towards climate mitigation. And then our partners in community development led with looking at really the opportunities in state and federal funding to help us do a lot of this work. And just given all the federal money that's available in transportation space, MTS planning has to be part of that. And then the last bullet here is really a question. There seems to be a gap in the climate vulnerability assessments, but I'm not sure what our role is in that space, what our partners want from us, and how can we be helpful in that space. So we're kind of just out there asking that question of our partners. And, happy to answer any questions now, or I can pass it off to Paul.
You want to just click it? I just have one slide. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for driving. So on the MTS contracted service action side, we are following in the good footsteps of Metro Transit. We are in the middle of our first zero emission bus study right now, working to see how the contracted service side can get to zero emission planning. And so this is probably going to be a multi-plan approach for us due to different complexities that we'll be dealing with, but very excited to be moving forward and beginning this process. Our first step is primarily focusing in on the garages that are owned within the region, because those are the easiest to work with Xcel Energy and our other partners in evaluating how much energy is going to be needed and when we can bring that in. So in fact, next week, our consultant and our staff are going to meet at Southwest Transit and MVTA to meet with Xcel to begin those conversations and the process of that evaluation. So once that plan is completed in the spring, that will allow MVTA and Southwest Transit to begin to be able to move into they should be much more competitive in the low-no grants moving forward with the FTA. And so as part of this plan as well, we are looking at the MTS facilities, which we don't own. Our contractors either own or lease those, adding a layer of complexity to future investments by MTS. But our consultant has worked with many other agencies that have similar situations and are ready to begin that process of working through those challenging issues. So that's where we're at right now on the short term on the MTS contracted services actions. And then as we work with our current situation with our contractors and their garage facilities is continually finding ways to improve their energy efficiencies as they go through remodeling or site changes, whether it be through lighting, whether it be through opportunities for additional insulation for energy savings, whether it be through parking lot repaving, such as our First Transit St. Paul garage is going through, working with the city of St. Paul to create cleaner runoff into the Mississippi River, taking a full approach to the climate action on this. So I'm glad to answer any questions from the MTS contracted side.
All right. For Metro Transit, our mitigation actions, three points here. Establish division and facility level performance targets and regularly report on the progress. If you can't manage it if you don't measure it. We've talked about goals, but one of the problems with goals is goal is such a big idea. How do we get our arms around a goal when our goal is our mission is to expand transit service, which means using more energy. Our real objective here is to shrink down the vehicle miles traveled and do it in a more greener fashion so that we are getting those cars and those single occupancy vehicles and cars off the road and using our transit services. So we talk about for our facilities, it's like, but we can set targets for each facility. We can set an electricity target, a gas target, an overall energy intensity target, and our goal can be as simply to hit 85–90% of our targets in a year, and that can be a goal that's achievable. And then with ongoing work, we can set more tighter targets, things that are harder to hit, to force us to keep working at it and not rest on our laurels. I don't think this second bullet point needs much explaining. We've put a lot of work into developing the zero emission bus transition plan. We're required to update it. It's going to guide us through that process, and thank God it's already there. And then last but not least on this page, develop division-specific inventories of our energy efficient and electrification opportunities within our facilities. how do we make our facilities better? We're still running big garages. We got all of them have 2 big boilers, a couple 10 million BTUs apiece. Run them on gas. Gas isn't available. We put them on diesel. But how do we look at our facilities in a different way? And you guys were out at the Minneapolis bus garage today. Some of those technologies that you saw, they were not going to heat the building. I mean, but they're going to help. They're going to reduce our load. They might take us a little bit longer in the fall and a little earlier in the spring before we have to turn on the boilers. What are our opportunities in that realm? I mean, right now there's a number of really exciting HVAC opportunities as the technology, those manufacturers and designers are coming up with new systems. When are we going to put those into our facilities? That's, what are the change? We're going to be on this path of evolution that's going to bring us from a small gas boiler to air source heat pumps with storage and things like this. It's going to change a lot of what we do. I think the first big change of a facility will be along the Orange Line when we see our first park and ride come up, and there'll be no gas going into the building. There'll be just electricity and air source heat pump, and we'll be a lot better off than we have in the past, and it'll be less costly. Priority 2, did I have here? Looking at our fleet, we talked about it. Non-revenue fleet is a big chunk of, it's a good chunk of what we do. It's gallons wise, it's small, a couple, 300,000-400,000 across the council, but there's opportunity there. We're buying vehicles every year. We buy vehicles somewhere. What is a greener opportunity for us? We have 40 almost Mitsubishi Outlanders. They do about 24 miles per gallon. A lot of them are being used in street operations. The vehicle they replaced was a Dodge Caravan, which was doing about 14. It's not a great big win, but it's a win for us. How do we continue to do that? Work to develop a refrigerant management plan. We're doing the work, it's just formalizing it. We're tracking our refrigerant in our facilities, we're tracking in our vehicles, bringing it together, being aware of what the impacts are, being prepared for the upcoming change in refrigeration was going to be January 1st, 2023. Now it's just January 1st, somewhere in the future. They're not quite sure when it's going to really happen. Look to develop a renewable energy deployment plan. We were invested, both ES and Transit are invested in community solar gardens. We have about 100, Transit has about 160 kilowatt hour, 160 kW of solar on various facilities. Or plans for the new bus garage are a couple megawatts worth of solar. How do we bring this forward? How do we use more renewable energy, whether it be straight up using it as we make it, or using it, storing it, and finding a time to use it later. And then last but not least, again, seek out opportunities and strategies to enhance our multimodal connections to our facilities and service improvements. Taking our business as usual approach and changing it up to ensure that our approach is beyond prescriptive solutions. We're innovative. We're out there thinking about new opportunities and ideas, and this will help our customers, our staff, and ultimately our finances in making this a more favorable place to use our services. Once we start talking adaptation, redundancy and resiliency, again, through electrical service, making sure Excel can't take us out of, something happens to Excel, it doesn't take us offline. We switch flips, we stay going, we still keep our service going. Nothing changes for us. We talk about secondary power feeds. We have some backup generators. Rules continue to change on that through the EPA. So it's important for us to look at these other opportunities such as storage. And then priority 2, again, we're looking at cross-divisional work groups, sustainable landscapes, working with our colleagues in ES who water's their thing. How do we take care of our landscapes? Reduce the amount of resources our staff has to put into cutting and mowing turf, which for some reason or another people are obsessed with in this country, that we have to have green grass. And green grass at a park and ride, it's what we do, but how do we change? How do we get to become, we talk about natural stormwater management, getting more of our stormwater, our rainwater into the ground, back into the aquifer. We talk about it, but now it's time to really work with our partners at like the soil and water conservation districts and the watershed districts and say, hey, what can we do? Can you get some money? Do you have some ideas? We probably don't need their money as much as we need their ideas into moving beyond what they talk about as best management practices for stormwater. This is going to be better than best. What opportunities are there to get water into the ground? Because as we're seeing right now with the Mississippi River, water is everything. It's a big part of our economy, and we're going to see this continue to be a challenge for us in the future. These events, like we're just experiencing, we're still in it. They're going to continue to happen. So, with that, I go to this page, and this shows us where we are today on October 24th, Transportation Committee, and some of you folks are going to see this a version of this presentation a few more times. I think Councilmember Lindstrom's going to join in a couple more times.
Absolutely.
But this is the schedule for us to get us to the end of the year. And with that, we left Paul off because Paul was not known at that time, but we thank him for his attendance. Any questions on the climate action work plan?
Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair. Yeah, and on slide 6, they say our commitment is to incorporate environmental justice principles as we plan, implement, and evaluate our work. What are we doing in that area?
Oh, you ask a very good question. We started this project. We got a ways into it. We said, we need to get this environmental justice thing. We set up a task force to work on environmental justice. I heard some good things earlier today about some of the outreach on the F line and things like this, but how are we going to do this? We went through there, we put together a framework for environmental justice, we put together a scorecard, we put the climate action plan, the matrix through that scorecard with our own staff, with external thought leaders and peers from various agencies, and we're collected the feedback and we're looking to incorporate the feedback in the next go-around. The single biggest takeaway we got out of this, though, was we need to have a rechartered environmental justice task force that brings environmental justice to the forefront outside of the climate action plan, not to be handled together simultaneously as kind of a, we threw this in with this and here you go, but to take our environmental justice, put together a cross-divisional team and bring it farther ahead to look at how we can make sure that environmental justice occurs in all the work that we do, that is out in front of all of our opportunity.
Just a follow-up again. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing that, and because I've read more recently that in diverse communities they're more adversely impacted by climate change and there. But I don't. Once you get past the first paragraph, there's very little information after that, and so I was just wondering, when we put our plan together, I'd really like to see that. The second thing is that when I went on one of the bus tours with the mayor and council members from New Hope, and out of their top 5 issues and challenges, they had development and other things, and they actually, it was a great tour. But one of the biggest things they had was losing their canopy due to ash trees and dying and so we drove and they showed the golf course and this and that where it's really making, you can see it's making an impact, and so they're going to be working harder on that. And then I met with some other group that I'm working with, and the same thing is that what can we do about restoring the canopy? You're right about the landscape. That doesn't necessarily have to not include a tree, but and there's that money for the carbon offset if you do so many trees, and so there's federal money available, but I don't know how we incorporate that as well. But I think there's some more proactive things we can do. We have a lot of land, and there's some things that will take some more research, and I'm interested in seeing it too, because I haven't really found something that I could say, well, this does impact more or less, Anyway.
I just have a follow-up comment to your first remarks about the environmental justice side of things. We've had a lot of conversations with the climate work group about this. I can tell you, when I testified in front of the climate caucus at the legislature, this was the focus. It was really definitely the heart of the conversation. And so much of it connects to the work that this committee does, especially when you look at where we're running different transit lines, where we're focusing on electrification or a zero emissions bus or things like that. So I really like that we're taking this off on on an additional tract, because it really ties together different issues of equity, of climate, of different pieces. And that's really the kind of discussion we started having at the climate work group of this needed its own platform as well. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So,
Madam Chair, Councilmember Pacheco, I'm dying to get started on this. Community development staff have put together a program called Growing Shade. It's available, you can find it on council website. It looks at tree canopy coverage across the Twin Cities, and it's not surprising that areas like where I live in Apple Valley, there are a lot of trees, even though there's been Dutch elm, ash borer, and other things. When you look at the north side of Minneapolis, less trees. Reasons why, I mean, big storm 15 years ago when the storm came through, folks, the ability to get those trees back into the ground, you're balancing that as an economic priority within your household, and there aren't as many trees. So the Growing Shade program is looking for opportunities to reestablish tree canopies throughout the region where it's, I don't know, for lack of better, blighted in comparison to other areas. How this continues on within the work, whether we make available council lands that we have, parks and things like that, to be places where people can put trees. I mean, I struggle with the idea that we jam trees on sites when we build so many of them, and they don't survive. And we're like, I could have taken 5 of those trees and sent them off to someplace along Minnehaha Creek or up along Bassett Creek, someplace or else in the community, and go, that tree can live here, versus I'm going to send a guy out in 2 years to cut it down, dig the hole out, and put a new one in, and we'll wash, rinse, and repeat going forward.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit more about solar and how that fits into our this program that you just presented? I know we did tour the bus, several of us toured the bus depot, and I know that they're the new bus garage, and I know that they're looking at solar on the roof there, but how else are we incorporating solar into the work plan?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cummings, solar is an opportunity for us, and it takes a lot of being in the right place at the right time. There are some talk about barriers and challenges with solar. One of them is working with the utility, and they've got limits on how big a solar system could be. I mean, in my perfect world, I cover every roof we have at all of our garages with solar, but Excel won't allow us to do that right yet. They're saying you have to be 125% of the facility usage in a year, and that's what limits the size of the array you can put up there. Moving forward, though, I think some of those things are ultimately going to change. They're going to have to. There are public facilities like what we own that are prime candidates to be covered in solar, and kind of along for the ride. Twice in the last 10 years, we've gone out something called a purchase power agreement, where we would have a developer put solar on our roof. We would buy the solar from them at a fixed rate. We ran into challenges with those problems because economically they just didn't work in our favor. It was hard to get a positive net present value out of them due to we get energy at a pretty low rate, and when you get somebody who's providing the panels, somebody who's installing the panels, somebody who's maintaining the panels, a developer who needs to get paid, this whole line of all these people getting money, it was really hard for the rate to be better than the rate we were going to pay. We were already paying with Excel. Subsequently, since then, we've seen electricity rates have gone up 20% since then. They're going up another 5% next year, guaranteed, and maybe 3 to 4 after that. So it's our future. It's in there. We've got commitments to solar gardens. We've used community solar gardens. Community solar gardens are a wonderful opportunity for us to put on all the ABRT lines. Those stations, they use a lot of electricity. It's easy to go right in, plug it into a community solar garden, and it's not a huge financial windfall, but it's clean energy, and it's 10% cheaper.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. I know very little about this, except that I read periodically things about what is the conflict in the cost of producing the solar panels and so forth as an offset to the savings in the environmental good that solar does. Do we look at that, or are we looking purely dollars and cents, or where does that come into play?
Oh, you ask Councilmember, our Chairman, Madam Chair Barber, Councilmember Cummings. That's a real challenge for all these things. I mean, it's in the paper today. It's the Tamarack mine, all the mining in northern Minnesota that folks want to do. if we want to have first world solutions for green energy, what are the second and third world costs? Now, when we start talking about mining in Minnesota, that's a first world cost for us. We can see that, we can feel it. Anybody who's ever been into the boundary waters knows what they're talking about when they say they want to build a mine on the edge of the boundary waters. I mean, I grew up on the Iron Range, and I'm familiar with all the mining, what's gone on in the past, and yet the idea of heavy metal mining on the edge of the boundary waters is something that I completely can understand the fears and also the needs. So I don't know if there is a good answer, but it is something we have to start thinking about is, what are our best ways forward when we look at battery technology? What does it mean? It doesn't come without a cost. It may not come to a cost to us, but it does come with a cost to somewhere else.
There's no questions, comments? All right, what do you need from us?
If for the folks that have seen the documents, take a look at them. If you have comments, get them back to us. Concerns, if you think we're going too far, pull us back in. If you don't think we're going far enough, slight nudge.
So I'd like to assign just a little homework. So like we did get this big matrix that has lots of information. Just like I carry the regional solicitation around with me, Peter carries his copy of the matrix with him. And so, take a look at those documents and do send some feedback. I think that it's a super long list. It gets detailed, but I particularly like it that it also lists some of the things where we need additional resources or additional people or things like that. There are different studies, and but there's so much to it that I think as many eyes as we can get on it, it would be very beneficial. And I'm sure that we can get all the information to the crew here and they can bring it to the climate team to update. So, Peter, you have any final words?
No, but I will say a few final words, which is that this is just a super exciting time. I may have mentioned this when we last met as a committee of the whole, but we've heard again tonight how much interest there is at the local level. You referenced New Hope, how much interest there is there, and how there are resources now at the federal government level too. The Inflation Reduction Act in particular is a game changer when it comes to local governments, regional governments. Jeff mentioned this idea of a PPA, power purchase agreement, and how the finances are not always ideal for us to go through this power purchase agreement. The Inflation Reduction Act is a game changer because it implements something called direct payment for local governments. That means that local governments, unlike businesses or individuals, can't take advantage of the federal tax credit, right? When you purchase a solar array. So they changed it so that now local governments and regional governments and state government, any sort of non-taxing entity can get direct payment of up to 30% of the array when purchased. So that makes the economics much more beneficial for entities like the Met Council.
Thank you.
Madam
Yeah,
Chair,
Councilmember.
and I've heard that reference, that local money and the ability to get it. I can't remember the figure, it was very large. And they use it to address some of the climate resiliency of these communities. And so I think that if there's monies out there, we could take a look at it anyway. Thank you.
Time is now.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, when you are looking at the matrix, when it talks about priorities, 1, 2s, and 3s, 1s mean things we can do relatively easy and has a big impact. It's not like what's the most important, because with the group we had, everything would have been a number 1. Now just almost everything's a number 1. Number 2s are things that are either not as big an impact or they're harder to do. It's like one or the other isn't quite as in line. And then 3s are, all the 3s I think are things that are not having a big impact, but they might be they have a small impact, but they're things we should do. We should take a note of and start looking to get done more. So that is somewhat a little bit confusing when it talks about priorities, that it's not what's the most important thing to do. It's more of what we should do, looking at it that way. What's the priority for things we should be doing up front or in the next year, and then things that we want to get in place before the end of the plan in 3 to 5 years.
Right. Any final words from council members? All right, thank you all
Thank you
very
all
much.
for your time.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
very much.
Yep, thank you, Councilman. And we're on to our last information item, is the regional solicitation funding scenarios. We kept a really light, easy thing for last. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief update for you here. I know we're running out the clock here a little bit, but let's go to the next slide. We have started the regional solicitation action item through our committee structure. And so I went through 2 funding and programming here last Thursday. And then we'll come back to you here after it goes to tab next month, Peter and his 33 colleagues. And you have an opportunity to consider concurrence on the entire list. So one thing we heard last meeting of this group here was to mark where the funding levels were pre-IIJA versus post. So we usually have about $200 million. So, what do you get for now $300 million in terms of what projects and what do you get? So that's now shown in the tables. If you look closely, there's a thick black line in there. So that's one thing people are very interested to see, and we're getting a lot more projects. We actually have closer, almost probably $335 million relative to the $200 million that we usually have. The big topic of discussion for this group last time was the carbon reduction program. We got feedback from this committee to put 2 years totaling $16 million into the regional solicitation. That was 2023 and 2024 dollars, and then hold on the remainder 2025 and beyond until the state's carbon reduction strategy could be completed, and several other efforts that the council is doing in that area. So what we heard from Chair Barber and Mr. Dugan and others was to put that $16 million towards safe routes to school projects and pedestrian facility projects within those are 2 smaller categories within the bike ped area. So that's what the tables currently show. If you look at those, we're funding essentially almost all of our safe routes to school and pedestrian facility projects as a way to kind of spread some money around the region. And also, people have talked about, pedestrian safety being a big issue right now that we're experiencing. So those are the 2 categories. Another topic of conversation was the unique project applications. The recommendation of the full tab was to fund 3 projects. One was the travel behavior inventory, and then the 2 out of the 3 unique project applications, one being the Metro Transit mobility hubs, and secondly being the EV car share. So that was took up quite a bit of our time at tab. And so now, based on that feedback, we have 3 scenarios that we're going to bring back to tab into this committee. 2 you've seen. You saw it last time, the midpoint, the blue, and then B2 is the bike ped heavy. But then we put one kind of in between based on some of these shifts that we talked about at tab, where it's the pink one, bike ped heavy, plus some of the money going back to the roadways area. So we've kind of the two posts, and then in between is this new scenario. So we'll see what comes of tab this next month. But we could have, if you look kind of closely at the tables, I think we're probably 95% of the way there. There's just the last few projects on the list that we're trying to solve, kind of where the last couple that will come in. So again, carbon reduction is a separate action item. So first, the tab will decide on a funding scenario, and then number 2 on the carbon reduction, what to do with that money. So we'll be back in a little over a month's time to this committee, and hopefully have some clear direction at that point. Mr. Dugan, anything? I know he gave a brief interlude here to start, but
I'll keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
It's 10 of 6.
Could you go back up to the slide with the table? So, council members, when we were talking a tab, so the initial ones we were talking about were A and B2, and it was the big change from sort of those base percentages is the reason we have one in the middle now, is really kind of how we added that in. I think there was good consensus about what to do with the carbon reduction funding and really the shift towards more non-motorized, just as this committee had also recommended. In fact, it's sometimes challenging to get tab 2 all aligned about something that had a clear alignment of what they felt about that, so which was similar to what we had, I think, by far. But the discussion now is, do we shift some funding to roadways because so much went to trails and parks and things like that versus continuing with the trend because we had so many applications really with the bike ped and trail side of things. I think that's sort of the fundamental discussion. I don't know. Would you anything to add, either Steve or Charles?
No, oh, go ahead. Yeah, at this point is if there's any messages that this committee wants to send back to TAB, that would be something that Chair Barber and Member Dugan would bring back to that group if there's some key question or direction that this group wants to see before it comes back as kind of a formal concurrence item.
Okay, so then questions, Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, thanks. Just seeing how the environmental initiatives transect equity is just really interesting. I mean, we're just getting started, a lot to learn about those intersections. That's what I meant to say, not transect, but you know what I meant. So I'm thinking about the engagement aspect of it. So when we do the public engagement, that's going to be really crucial from an equity standpoint. There are some unique differences that we're not used to dealing with in terms of how people move and where they go. I know for many BIPOC community members, they travel long ways to be with some of their core community, where their core community activities are. For example, African Americans will travel from the suburbs into Minneapolis to get their services, whether it's their hair care or their products or their clothing, because we don't have those businesses locally where we live. Yep. Maybe some of our events are also in other areas, so there's a lot of distance between your home and where you shop and where you do things, and I'm not sure we've been capturing that. And that's not just on environment or the regional solicitation funding. It also impacts projects such as the Blue Line Extension and things like that. So we just have to continue to dig deeper and understand what diversity means in terms of how we plan.
Good point. Yep, we can bring that back to a few colleagues I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Ask them further about that, including the kind of travel behavior inventory and how we're collecting that, and if there's some trends that we could get out of that.
Mm-hmm. Other questions, comments? Things related to him? All right. I think you're good.
Okay.
All right, if you do have comments as you look at some of this, especially the, again, regional solicitation table version, definitely get in touch with Steve or Director Carlson. So we're more than happy to get that moving in.
He's the expert.
He's the expert. All right. Well, that concludes our business for the evening. Then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cummings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.
2 more hours here.